Welcome to the Deep Dive. I'm Liam.
And I'm Lisa.
Today, we're going to tackle, well, a tough topic, but it's super relevant. Consistently negative and, frankly, demeaning behavior in the workplace. I mean, let's be real, most of us have probably experienced this, or at least seen it happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's that, persistent pattern. It doesn't just ruin your day. It really grinds down morale.
Yeah.
Makes work feel like just a constant struggle.
And it's so important we talk about this because the impact, well, it goes way beyond just one person feeling bad. This kind of behavior, it can infect whole teams, even entire organizations.
Right.
So by understanding what it actually looks like, maybe why it takes hold, and crucially, what we can do about it, that knowledge can be incredibly valuable for navigating your own career, for helping build healthier places to work.
Yeah, equipping yourself.
Exactly. It helps you spot these toxic patterns, really grasp the consequences, and, maybe even be part of making things better.
Totally agree. So in this deep dive, we're going to get really clear on defining this specific kind of negativity, not just general grumpiness.
Right.
Then we'll look at the significant damage it does. To people, yes, but also to the bottom line.
And we'll dig into that puzzling question. Why do some people who act this way actually climb the ladder, get into positions of power?
Yeah, that's a big one.
We'll also try to break down maybe different types of individuals who show this behavior. Understanding that might help figure out how to approach things.
Okay.
And more positively, we'll definitely get into practical strategies, how to actually cultivate a more positive, more respectful workplace.
Good. And leadership's role in that.
Oh, absolutely crucial. We have to talk about leadership's impact on the culture.
And for anyone listening who's maybe dealing with this right now, we want to offer some concrete coping mechanisms, ways to manage those difficult dynamics.
Yeah, some survival tips.
And I think this is important. Take a moment for a bit of honest self-reflection, too. Could we sometimes be contributing, even unintentionally?
That's a tough but necessary question.
And finally, we'll wrap up by highlighting the really profound benefits of a workplace that's actually free from this kind of toxicity. Sound good?
Sounds great. Let's dive in.
Okay, first things first. Defining the behavior. What exactly are we talking about here? Because it's not just like occasional disagreements, right?
No, exactly. It's really important to draw that line. We're not talking about healthy debate or someone giving, tough but fair feedback, or even just someone having an off day.
We all have those.
We all have those. The key here is a repeated pattern, a consistent way of acting that makes other people feel small, humiliated, belittled, intimidated, like they're less than.
A pattern. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's habitual. It leaves people feeling, drained?
Yeah.
Questioning themselves.
Yes, precisely. And often you'll see it directed downwards in the hierarchy, towards subordinates or people who maybe feel they have less power to push back.
Right.
There's a useful sort of two-point test you can think about. First, after you interact with this person, do you consistently feel worse about yourself? Not just once in a while, but regularly. Do you walk away feeling kind of deflated, undermined, just negative?
That's a gut check.
It is. And the second point, does this person treat people below them or with less organizational power noticeably worse than they treat their superiors or people they see as important?
The kiss up, kick down dynamic.
Pretty much. It's a classic sign. And again, like you said, it's the pattern, not one bad meeting or a clumsy comment. It's this ingrained way they interact.
Got it. So what are some concrete examples? What does this look like day to day?
Well, it can range quite a bit. You've got the sort of constant drip of sarcasm, snide remarks, maybe disguised as jokes.
Yeah, just kidding.
Exactly. Or the person who always interrupts you in meetings, or just flat out ignores your contributions, talks over you.
That's frustrating.
It is. Then you get into more damaging territory. Things like actively undermining someone's work behind the scenes, spreading gossip or rumors, backstabbing.
Okay, that's definitely toxic.
Or, the classic blame shifting, making sure they never take responsibility, but they're quick to steal credit when things go well.
Credit stealing.
And micromanaging, but not the supportive kind, the hostile kind, where it's clearly about control and making you feel incompetent or untrusted.
Right. It really paints a bleak picture. So we know what it looks like. Why is it so crucial for organizations to actively stamp this out? I mean, if someone gets results, maybe some friction is okay.
That's a really common, but I think dangerous way organizations think sometimes. They have to discourage this because it systematically destroys the workplace fabric.
Destroys it? How?
Well, think about the immediate effects. It just crushes team morale. It creates this atmosphere of fear, anxiety, people walking on eggshells,
Yeah.
and that directly kills trust. Forget open communication. Why would anyone stick their neck out with a new idea or raise a difficult but important concern if they think they're just going to get shot down or ridiculed?
So innovation dries up, people play it safe.
Completely. It fosters a really poisonous environment, and that has very real, tangible consequences.
Like what?
Like employee turnover, especially your best people. Talented individuals, people who have options, they are not going to stick around to be consistently demeaned. They'll leave.
And that puts pressure on everyone else.
Huge pressure, more stress, more burnout for the people left behind. You see increased absenteeism, more health problems. It just spirals. And ultimately, this negativity just seeps into the whole organizational culture, makes it a miserable place to be.
I heard this idea once that resonates here. One demeaning jerk can undermine a team more than multiple incompetent workers.
Oh, that's absolutely spot on. It really is. You can often train someone who lacks a skill, right? But fighting against that constant negativity, that deliberate undermining, it's exhausting and often feels impossible.
Yes, skills versus, like, character flaws.
Exactly. And this leads us nicely into this concept, sometimes called the total cost of assholes, or TCA.
Okay, TCA. I like it. Sounds serious.
It is serious. Because the cost isn't just the obvious stuff, like when someone quits. There's this whole hidden iceberg of expenses tied to this kind of behavior.
An iceberg. Okay, break down these hidden costs for us. What are the layers?
Okay, think about the drain on resources. First, just the sheer amount of time. Managers, HR folks, spending hours and hours putting out fires caused by this one person.
Mediating disputes, dealing with complaints.
Exactly. Investigating things, trying to patch up relationships. That's all time not spent on growing the business, on strategy, on supporting the good people.
Okay, time. What else?
And there's the actual money, hard cash. Think about potential legal fees if things escalate to harassment lawsuits.
Oof.
The
Yeah.
cost of maybe providing therapy or counseling through employee assistance programs for the people affected. And the huge cost of recruitment, finding, hiring, training replacements for the people who leave because of this person, that adds up fast.
So it's not just their salary, it's this whole expensive ripple effect.
Huge ripple effect. Then, layer on top of that, the cost to morale. We talked about this productivity tanks. Creativity gets stifled because people are scared.
Right, fear isn't exactly inspiring.
Not at all. The whole atmosphere becomes oppressive. And finally, think about the company's reputation.
How so?
Well, if you get known as a place with a toxic culture, word gets around. It becomes way harder to attract good talent. People talk. It can even damage your brand in the eyes of customers or partners eventually.
Wow. Okay, so TCA time, money, morale, reputation. It's a comprehensive view of the damage. You mentioned an example earlier, without names, of a high performer whose negativity actually costs more.
Yeah, there are documented cases like this. Imagine someone who, on paper, brings in a lot of revenue or is technically brilliant.
The brilliant jerk.
Exactly, the brilliant jerk.
Yeah.
But their behavior is so consistently demeaning that it leads to, say, multiple HR complaints, maybe a settlement or two. High turnover on their team, meaning constant recruitment costs. Low morale spreading beyond their immediate team. When you actually add up all those hidden TCA costs, the legal fees, the recruitment, the lost productivity from fear and low morale, it can completely dwarf whatever financial contribution they were making.
So the net effect is negative.
Absolutely negative. And the key takeaway here is crucial. High individual performance cannot excuse this kind of behavior. It's just not worth it in the long run. The damage to the organization, to its people, to its culture, it's too high a price to pay.
That's a really hard truth for some organizations, especially if they're focused only on short-term results. But tolerating it sounds like, well, a slow poison.
It really is.
Yeah.
Which leads to this kind of uncomfortable point we need to discuss, the fact that sometimes individuals who act this way actually do manage to climb the ranks. They end up in positions of power.
Right. It's baffling sometimes. You see these people in leadership roles and you just wonder, how? What are the flawed reasons this happens?
Yeah, it's frustrating. There are a few things often going on. Sadly, sometimes their sheer aggression gets misinterpreted.
As what? Strength.
Yeah, as strong leadership. as being decisive. They might push their agenda really hard, maybe even confrontationally, and some people mistake that for, drive or vision.
Okay.
They also often master using intimidation. People might just go along with them to avoid conflict, to avoid becoming the next target, so they get compliance, even if it's based on fear.
Compliance through fear. Not exactly sustainable.
Not at all. And another thing, sometimes sheer arrogance gets mistaken for competence. Someone who acts incredibly confident, maybe dismissive of others' doubts, can sometimes bluff their way up, impressing people who don't look closely enough.
It sounds like they're playing by a different rule book, and somehow it works.
Yeah.
At least for a while.
Exactly. It can be effective in the short term, unfortunately, but like we've been saying, it's a totally short-sighted win with massive long-term negative consequences.
Right. What happens when these individuals actually get into positions of power?
Well, the damage gets amplified. They tend to create those fear-based cultures we talked about, where honest feedback is impossible. People are scared to take initiative. They often focus more on internal politics, on protecting their own turf, than on genuine collaboration or what's best for the organization.
Sounds like it breeds dysfunction.
Total dysfunction. And of course, they drive away talented people, the very people the organization needs most. There's a saying that's really relevant here: power reveals character. Giving someone with these tendencies real authority just makes the damage they cause much, much worse.
That is a sobering thought. It really highlights that this isn't just about dealing with a difficult coworker. It's about the fundamental health, the effectiveness of the whole organization potentially being undermined from the top.
Precisely.
Now, you mentioned earlier that there might be different types of individuals who show this behavior. Can you elaborate on that distinction?
Yes, I think making a distinction can be helpful, though it's not always black and white. We can kind of broadly think about temporary versus certified types.
Okay, temporary versus certified. Let's start with temporary. What does that look like?
So these are people whose negative behavior isn't necessarily their default mode. It's often triggered by something specific, usually temporary, maybe intense stress at work, a personal crisis outside of work, that kind of thing.
Okay, so situational.
Often, yes. And the really key difference is that they frequently feel remorse afterwards. They might snap or be overly critical, but later they realize it was wrong. They might even apologize or try to make amends.
So there's self-awareness there.
Yes, often there is. And the good news is, their behavior is usually changeable. With support, maybe some direct but empathetic feedback, coaching, they can often learn better ways to cope with stress and interact more positively.
So hope for improvement.
Definitely. Now, compare that to the other end of the spectrum, the certified individuals.
Okay. What makes someone certified in this context? Not a qualification you'd want.
No, definitely not. These are the folks who consistently, repeatedly engage in demeaning behavior. It is their default mode, more or less. A really defining feature is often a profound lack of empathy.
Lack of empathy.
Yeah, they seem either completely oblivious to how their words and actions affect others, or frankly, they just don't care. They rarely acknowledge the harm they cause, show little or no interest in changing. It's just who they are, how they operate.
So it's deeply ingrained.
Very deeply ingrained. And the difficult truth is, these individuals can be incredibly destructive to an organization. Sometimes protecting the team and the culture means making a tough decision about whether they can even remain in the organization. Removal might actually be necessary.
That's a stark difference. Temporary, potentially fixable with support. Certified, a much deeper, more damaging pattern.
Exactly. It helps frame how you might need to approach different situations.
Right. Okay, so let's shift gears towards solutions. Proactive stuff. How can organizations start building a more positive, respectful workplace right from the get-go? Prevent this stuff from taking root.
This is where we move from just diagnosing the problem to actively building immunity, so to speak. The fundamental idea is to create a culture that, 1, screens out these tendencies during hiring, 2, consistently reinforces respectful behavior, and 3, holds everyone accountable for how they treat each other.
Screen reinforced accountability.
Yeah.
Sounds like a solid plan. But what does that look like in practice? What are some actual steps?
Okay, several key areas, starting right at the beginning. Hiring. Organizations need to make kindness and respectful communication skills a real priority, right alongside technical skills and experience.
Have you screened for that?
Use behavioral interview questions. Ask candidates to describe times they dealt with conflict, how they give feedback, how they showed empathy. Listen carefully to how they talk about past colleagues. References can sometimes hint at this too if you ask the right questions.
So bake it into the hiring process.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Then ongoing training is important. Not just compliance stuff, but programs focused on building emotional intelligence, active listening, inclusive leadership, giving people the actual skills for positive interaction.
So it's not just about knowing the rules, but having the skills.
Exactly. How you interact matters just as much as what you achieve. Then creating a safe environment for feedback is critical.
Psychological safety.
Yes, people need to feel safe reporting toxic behavior without fearing they'll be punished for speaking up. That means clear, trusted reporting channels and leadership visibly demonstrating that they take these concerns seriously and will act.
Walking the talk.
Totally. And finally, enforcement. You have to recognize and reward positive interpersonal behavior, teamwork, collaboration, not just individual results. Make it clear that how you achieve results matters. And conversely, there must be real, consistent consequences for consistently demeaning behavior, regardless of someone's perceived status or performance.
No brilliant jerks allowed, basically.
That's the goal, and remember that statement. Organizations become the people they hire and tolerate.
That really sticks. It puts the onus on being intentional about who you bring in and what behaviors you allow.
Which brings us back to leadership. How critical are leaders in all this?
Oh, they're absolutely fundamental. Leaders set the tone. Their behavior, what they model, what they tolerate, that sends the loudest message about what's truly acceptable in the organization.
So if a leader acts like a jerk or looks the other way when others do,
They're basically giving permission. Even if the company policy says otherwise, their actions scream louder. It signals that, yeah, that behavior is actually okay here, maybe even rewarded if that person is seen as successful.
wow, okay. So what do effective leaders do differently in this context?
Effective leaders consistently model respect and humility themselves. In every interaction, they don't just talk about it, they live it. They also proactively address bullying or demeaning behavior when they see it. They don't shy away from difficult conversations.
They call it out. Yes. They foster that psychological safety we mentioned within their teams, making it safe to speak up, make mistakes, be vulnerable. And they tend to celebrate team wins, collective success, not just shine a spotlight on individual stars, which can sometimes fuel negative competition.
So fostering collaboration over cutthroat behavior.
Exactly. Ultimately, leaders need to make it crystal clear through words and actions that being a decent human being isn't optional. It's a core performance expectation for everyone, period.
Decency is a performance expectation. I like that. Okay, let's shift focus now to the individuals who might be listening and thinking, this sounds like my workplace right now. What can they do if they have to work alongside someone like this? Practical survival strategies.
Yeah, this is tough because ideally the organization addresses it, but realistically that doesn't always happen quickly or at all. So you need ways to cope and protect yourself.
What are some mental tactics?
Okay, mentally, building some emotional detachment can help. Try to view the behavior more objectively, almost like watching a bad weather system pass through. Consciously decide not to internalize their negativity. Don't let it define your self-worth.
Easier said than done sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. It takes practice. Another tactic is reframing. Try to consider that maybe their behavior comes from their own deep-seated insecurities or weaknesses, not from some genuine position of power or superiority over you. That can sometimes lessen its sting.
Seeing it as their problem, not yours.
Exactly. And maybe with caution, a little bit of empathy can sometimes help create distance. Acknowledging that their behavior might stem from their own struggles again, not excusing it, but understanding that can sometimes make it feel less personal.
Okay, so detachment, reframing, maybe cautious empathy for mental defense. What about practical actions?
Practically, the first thing is often limit contact. If your work allows, try to minimize interactions. Communicate via email if face-to-face is always draining. Structure your work to reduce dependency on them.
Minimize exposure.
Yep. Second, find allies. Build supportive relationships with colleagues you trust. Having people who understand what you're going through, who can validate your experience, provide a buffer that can make a huge difference. Don't suffer in silence.
Strengthen numbers.
Definitely. And finally, document the abuse. Keep a factual record of specific incidents. Dates, times, what was said or done, who witnessed it, not emotionally charged, just the facts.
Why document?
It serves as self-protection. If you eventually need to go to HR or if things escalate legally, having a clear documented history is invaluable. It moves it from he said, she said, to a pattern of behavior.
That sounds like really solid, practical advice for a tough spot. Now, we've focused a lot on others' bad behavior, but you mentioned self-reflection earlier. Why is it important to turn the mirror on ourselves?
It's absolutely crucial, I think. If we genuinely want better workplaces, we have to be willing to examine our own impact. It requires real honesty, maybe confronting some uncomfortable truths.
Kinds of questions should we ask ourselves?
Ask yourself, honestly, have I ever made someone feel tearful, fearful, small, even unintentionally? Do people seem maybe hesitant to approach me? Do interactions feel forced or overly polite, like they're walking on eggshells around me?
Hmm.
And how do I react to feedback, especially feedback about my interpersonal style? Do I get defensive? Do I dismiss it? Or am I genuinely open to hearing how I come across?
Those are challenging questions. If someone listening does recognize some of those patterns in themselves, what can they do? What are the steps towards positive change?
Well, the first step, and it's a big one, is genuine acknowledgement. If you realize you've negatively impacted someone, offer a sincere, direct apology. Without excuses. That shows you take responsibility.
Okay. Acknowledgement and apology.
Then make a real commitment to change. This isn't a one-time fix, it's ongoing work. Pay attention to your interactions. Actively seek out feedback from people you trust, people who will be honest with you. Ask for specific examples. Be receptive even when it's hard to hear.
So be open to learning.
Yes, and focus on developing greater self-awareness and empathy. Pause before you speak or act, especially when you're stressed. Think about the potential impact on the other person. Try to see things from their perspective. Practice self-control.
It sounds like a continuous improvement journey.
It really is. And look, we all have moments. We all screw up sometimes, say the wrong thing, have a bad day. The key isn't perfection. It's acknowledging those moments, learning from them, and genuinely striving to do better next time.
That focus on learning and growth is really important.
Yeah.
Okay, as we start to wrap this up, let's come back to the big picture. What are the real tangible benefits of creating a workplace that is truly free from this kind of demeaning behavior? What's the payoff?
Oh, the payoff is huge. It's profound. First off, treating people with basic decency and respect, that's not weakness, that's strength. It shows emotional intelligence, maturity. Kindness isn't naive. It's actually a really powerful force for building connection and trust.
So it's foundational.
Absolutely. When you build a culture of civility, you get greater psychological safety. People feel safe to be themselves, to speak up, to contribute their best ideas, to take smart risks without fear of being shamed or punished.
And that leads to?
That leads directly to more innovation, better problem solving, higher productivity, and genuine employee loyalty. People want to work in places where they feel valued and respected, they stay longer, they're more engaged.
So it impacts the bottom line too.
Definitely. There are plenty of examples, even if we don't name specific companies, of organizations that have consciously built respectful cultures and have seen fantastic results, better performance, lower turnover, stronger brand reputation. The point isn't about having super strict rules or policing every word.
Right.
It's about cultivating an environment where people can bring their best selves to work, do their best work, without living in fear or suffering emotional harm. That's the ultimate goal.
That's a really powerful and frankly inspiring vision for what work could be. It makes it clear that a positive environment isn't just nice to have, it's essential for success and well-being. Thank you. This has been incredibly insightful.
My pleasure. It's such an important topic.
Okay, so just to quickly recap our deep dive today.
Yeah.
We really tried to nail down what consistently negative and demeaning behavior looks like, explored its pretty devastating impact on people and organizations.
Looked at why it sometimes gets rewarded, unfortunately.
Right. And importantly, offered some real strategies for building better cultures, the crucial role of leadership, and some coping tools for those dealing with it now.
And that crucial piece on self-reflection, too.
Exactly. Can't forget that.
Oh.
Which leads us perfectly into our final thought for you, the listener. Think about this. What's one small, specific action you can take, starting today, in your own interactions, to contribute to a more respectful, more positive environment where you are? Maybe it's consciously practicing active listening in your next meeting. Maybe it's offering constructive feedback more thoughtfully. Or just be more mindful of your tone, your body language. What's one thing?
Those small, consistent actions really do add up.
They really do. Well, thanks so much for joining us for this deep dive. If you found this conversation helpful or thought-provoking, please do like it, maybe share it with colleagues or friends who might find it useful, and definitely subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into important topics like this.
We appreciate you listening.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in.